two nurses of one of the maternity wards in New York were having a quiet conversation with each other. "Vanessa, don't worry about it. You're only 28 years old. You'll still have time to give birth. And if David really loves you, he will never leave you." Tina objected, confident in the truth of her own words. Vanessa didn't answer, because she knew that her friend had two children and a loving husband by her side. And it's not that Vanessa envied Tina, who is being an orphan from birth. Not at all. The girl just felt that childlessness oppressed her every day, turning into obsession. At first, when Vanessa did not yet even know that she was infertile, she liked to communicate with women in labor and mess with the babies every day. But over time, when all her attempts to get pregnant failed, one after another, the girl finally despaired. And now, the sight of happy moms with children caused tears and emotional tortures. She met David 2 years ago, and it cannot be said that their relationship was flawless. Vanessa's chosen one was an example of a practical person who would never spend an extra cent on a gift or flowers for the woman he loved. Then they were brought together by Tina, who wanted her friend to forget her unsuccessful first love as soon as possible and switch her attention to someone else. But David turned out to be completely different from her ex-boyfriend, who, for the sake of his beloved, was ready to get a star from the sky. With Peter, she was getting ready for a wedding. Unfortunately, it so happened that the groom was taken away from Vanessa by Amanda Lopez, who liked a handsome brown-haired man. Vanessa then just had a difficult period at work, and Peter was left to himself for a long time. When everything got better for Vanessa, she was surprised to notice that the guy had become a stranger and somehow pulled away. She tried not to pay attention to it, but every day the relationship between them only worsened. And one day, Vanessa even saw Peter in an embrace with Amanda when they were leaving the cafe together. At the sight of such meanness, the girl could not hold back tears, and covering her eyes with her hands, began to cry sitting on a bench at the bus stop. After that, there was still a lot of tantrums, sleepless nights, and pillows soaked with the bitterness of tears. After that incident, Peter wanted to explain everything, and said that there was nothing between him and Amanda. But Vanessa was adamant, and did not forgive him for his weakness. Over time, Vanessa's emotional wounds, if not healed, at least stopped her bringing her suffering. But the new relationship did not bring the desire of peace and family happiness into her life, especially since David's words increasingly shows dissatisfaction with his beloved. "Vanessa, maybe you should pass the examination again. Medicine does not stand still." But Vanessa, in response to this, only sighed bitterly, shyly avoiding her eyes to the side. So she lived with David and his eternal claims, which only aggravated the guilt in her soul. That memorable morning began very troublesome and very unusual for the nurses of the maternity ward. "Vanessa, did you see that Amanda Lopez was brought in with contractions? She's giving birth," said the excited Tina, barely catching her breath. "Amanda?" "The Amanda. Of course, the one that took Peter away from you. The ambulance brought her in this morning. They say that she wanted to have an abortion, but it was too late," Tina added. Condemnation was read in her eyes. Vanessa's heart alarmingly pricked. It could hardly be called envy, rather sadness that she could not become a mother. However, Vanessa was happy for his ex-fiance. In family terms, he is doing well. About 3 hours later, an agitated Tina came into the nurse's room again and said, "You won't believe it, my friend. Amanda gave birth to a girl. And what do you think? This would-be mother wants to leave her in the orphanage." "What do you mean, leave her? How can she?" Vanessa asked, and not waiting for an answer, hurried to Amanda's room. The woman in labor, of course, recognized her immediately. "You see what happens to those who want to build their happiness on someone else's grief," said Amanda, hugging her newborn daughter. "What are you talking about? This is not a reason for sadness. Being a mom is a real happiness," Vanessa objected, but the woman in labor only sobbed and squeezed out through tears. "Why would I need her? Peter and I have already broken up. He probably doesn't know anything about his daughter." Vanessa helped Amanda to change the girl's swaddling clothes, thinking about how to help the baby which the mother decided to abandon. All this time, the unfortunate woman in labor did nothing but complain about fate and say how unlucky she was. This impressed Vanessa so much that when she came home, she offered following to David. "Honey, let's adopt the girl. She's still little, just a day old. We can make her our daughter." "Well, I don't know, Vanessa. This is a responsible step for me, and I'm not ready to take it, especially now. I have my whole life ahead of me. If you want to adopt, it's your right, but just do it please without me." After this conversation, Vanessa went to sleep in another room, where she cried all night. And in the morning, David came up to her and said he didn't mind adopting the girl. On the same day after talking with him Monday, Vanessa took the girl, whom she named Mary. At the same time, the girl collected all the necessary documents for the adoption of the girl. Now, when she had a cute and mischievous baby by her side, the maternal instinct woke up in Vanessa, and she finally experienced what real feminine happiness is. It was 3 unforgettable months, full of love and tenderness for her daughter. Vanessa was literally floating in clouds, forgetting about everything in her world. Meanwhile, David, who had initially agreed to the adoption, was getting darker every day. Deep down, the man was depressed by the prospect of becoming the father of an adopted girl who would never become his own. One day, David packed up his things and left the house. Vanessa, of course, did not expect such meanness and betrayal, and hardly anyone knows how many tears and mental suffering the unfortunate girl had to go through. In public, Vanessa still tried to hold on, but at night she already let loose tears. All this time, only help of a friend and love for Mary did not let the girl give up. For many months after David left her, Vanessa did not stop looking for Peter, who, according to Amanda, did not even suspect that he had a daughter. Months passed, and Peter still could not be found. It was as if the guy had disappeared into the thin air. But one day, luck still smiled on her, although this news barely could be called happy. Vanessa learned from her friend, who works in a home for the disabled, that Peter was an award for the paralyzed. Peter met her with a timid smile on his face. "As you can see, I am now disabled for life. Amanda and I had an accident. She got behind the wheel and decided to overtake in a wrong place. Why did I just give her control? Then she knew everything and left you, and she didn't even tell me," Vanessa whispered, turning pale. Then the girl told Peter that he had a daughter. Also, she promised to help the man overcome his illness. "Is that really possible? With my spine, I can't even move," Peter objected. "Nothing is impossible. Don't despair. It's never too late to try," Vanessa objected. It was difficult to convince Vanessa, so the guy just waved his hand, not thinking that the matter would get off the ground. Meanwhile, the nurse took Peter from the shelter for the disabled to her home, where, armed with special literature, she began therapy. Applying ointments and special massages, Vanessa restored the sensitivity of Peter's fingers. Then, over time, the nurse was able to put him in a wheelchair, thereby giving the guy the ability to move. "Well, it is already beginning," Vanessa said with a smile, a year after the start of the treatment. Now, Peter could already nurse his daughter in his arms, to whom he had become very attached lately, considering her his blood. Realizing that her knowledge was not enough to fully revive Peter's limbs, Vanessa began to look for doctors who practice non-traditional methods of treatment. For 3 years, the girl has visited many rehabilitation centers for the disabled, many private clinics, but she was politely refused everywhere, considering Peter's case hopeless. And one day, one gossip led Vanessa to a professor who lived in the outskirts of the city and specialized in athletes' injuries. After examining Peter, the elderly doctor agreed to help him. His technique was based on a gradual strengthening of the muscles of the back in order to eventually relieve the load from the spine. Peter didn't believe it at first, considering the doctor an ordinary charlatan. But to his surprise, 6 months later, he already felt the strength in his legs, and a couple of months later, he was able to take the first step on his own. Of course, all this time, Mary and Vanessa were with Peter, who by that time had already become his family. Feelings that were between Vanessa and Peter flared up with renewed vigor, and it seemed that the young people had a second wind. Time passed, but Vanessa was never able to get pregnant. It is worth saying that Peter turned out to be an understanding and loving husband, and was not at all like David, who did nothing but accuse his wife of infertility. Peter, instead of looking for the culprits, suggested adoption of the boy from an orphanage so that Mary would have a brother. Hearing this, the girl felt over the moon with happiness. Having taken custody of little Billy, Vanessa finally felt like a full-fledged woman who had experienced the joys of motherhood and family life. Imperceptibly, in happy troubles and worries, several years passed. Mary grew up and has become seriously interested in sports. The girl discovered in herself amazing abilities in rhythmic gymnastics and showed amazing results in this. The fame of the young record holder spread far beyond the state, and one of the beautiful days, Mary was included in the application for an international tournament. Vanessa and Peter couldn't get enough for their daughter's success. With a sinking heart, the family clung to the TV screen, where the competitions in which Mary took part were broadcasting. When the winners were announced and the daughters were awarded the gold medal, Vanessa and Peter almost fainted from an overabundance of feelings. Parents went with the whole family to meet the winner. A crowd of reporters and just fans of Mary's athletic talent gathered at the plane's ramp welcoming her. Among the people present at the ceremony, everyone was laughing and rejoicing, and only one woman was crying, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. The young champion did not even realize that it was her biological mother, Amanda Lopez. The woman accidentally found out about her daughter's success from a television news release. It's hard to say what exactly Amanda was guided by at the moment. She didn't have a close and beloved person, as well as there were no children. Noticing Mary coming down the ramp of the private plane, the woman rushed to her, trying to squeeze through the ranks of fans. But then she saw her daughter throw herself into the arms of Vanessa and Peter. From all that she saw, bitter tears welled up in Mary's mother's eyes, and hunching her shoulders, she sadly wandered away. Amanda Lopez herself was to blame for all her troubles, and the fact that she found herself with nothing turned out to be only her merit. Having abandoned her own daughter, the woman wanted to bathe in a race of her glory, forgetting about what Vanessa had to go through in order to achieve comfort and well-being. Mary, on the other hand, is not going to stop there, intending to connect her life with sports. But Vanessa and Peter raising little Billy, and in their hearts dream of the day when Mary will bring the groom to the house.